Okay, hello, welcome again. This is I think the 6th video in my series of how to learn about the notes on one of these, a DG Melodeon. In the last video we covered playing in D major on the bottom end of the keyboard in the lower octave, and that's meant that, well, so far we've covered quite a lot of notes now, certainly all the ones around this area of the keyboard, but not so many up here, so that's where we're going to go to next. Now, if you're being particularly observant, you'll notice in the last video I was using a black Melodeon and now I'm using this brown one. Now there's a reason for that, and it's something I touched upon in a previous episode. When we start going up to this end of the keyboard, if we just have an instrument that has what's called M medium reeds in it, it starts sounding very high. We can emulate that on this box by, yeah, that's a really high one. To make it sound not so high, just to make it sound a bit more pleasant to our human ears and not be so dog whistle like, if you've got an instrument that's got a set of lower reeds in it as well, this one's got a set and you can engage them with this button on the top, so I can put those in and introduce them. So without it, say we'll play, put it in, you can hear the difference. And if I play the very high notes on here, even that really squeaky one isn't so squeaky anymore. So that's why I've switched to this one. The only issue with this switch is that this particular model, this particular instrument, maybe even that, this has got its G starting on the 4th note. The previous instrument had the G starting on the 3rd one. So that's why I've been trying to stress concentrating on the relationships between the notes. So start on one you know and find the others from there, rather than just counting along the edge. I have mentioned about being the 3rd button along or the 6th button along. It helps to a point, but then when you change instruments and you've got one like this, whatever the 3rd one is then becomes the 4th one, and so on, and it gets confusing. So bear that in mind. If you happen to be watching this and trying to count along what I'm doing, it's not going to be the same as it was with the black instrument. So what we're going to do now is extend the D major scale that we did in the lower part of the instrument and extend it right along the outer row right to the very end. So that's going to cover quite some ground. Are you ready? You're doing well if you've got this far. Cheers for now. Let's go for it. Okay, so we're going to be very ambitious here. We're going to take on 6 notes, six notes, all at once. I'll show you what they are on the keyboard, and I'll show you why we're going to do that. So the D major scale we learned just now, that started on this note equivalent here and ended up there. So what we're going to do is now carry on up to the next D, or towards that way anyway. So we're going to take the next 6, and the next 6 duplicate on the piano keyboard exactly what we just did, but start higher up. So it's going to be D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. So those are the 6 we're going to do right away. And the reason why I'm putting those all together is that if you remember back to some of the very earliest videos, all of those notes that we just covered are ones that we've already done before, because they are the ones that cover the G major scale extended up to the point that we did it last time, up to that A and the B at the end. That's what we did on the G major scale when we were playing on the inside row, and we were playing exactly those same notes. So all we do now is just play those again, but this time we're going to learn how to play those same notes on the outside row. So let's find our bearings. Let's play the bottom scale first on here. So we'll start here, and as I said, this is a 4th button start instrument, so that's where my D is on this one. So that's the first one we now need to do. We got to that D, and on G, we've already said about this, the D there is also available on the G row, but we're going to do it on the outside one. So that D, and then the next note is an E, and again the E is available on the G row as a pull, but we're going to play it on the outside one, and that actually is a pull on that one also. So the E note is available in this octave on both rows in the same direction, and you get to choose which one you use, but we're going to use the outer one for now because we're playing in D major, and that's what you would normally do, I think. The next one is F sharp, and F sharp is on that same button as the E but pushing it. Again, that's a note which we already played on the inner row, but when we played it on the inner row, that was a pull note when we did that. So suddenly we've got an F sharp both directions. And then the next one is on the next button up now, and that's going to be another pull. And that's a G note, and again, well, obviously when we were playing G major, we were playing the G note on the inside too. So that was there. Now we can play it on the outside one by pulling it. One little tip, that G on the outside one is something I use quite a lot when I'm playing in G major, particularly if you've got a C chord going on or something like that. Being able to pull a G is very useful in lots of instances. There's one Morris tune where I do that just so that I can get enough air in the instrument, because if I played another pushing one it would just collapse. Yeah, so that G, and then the next one is on the same button, an A, and again that's a push, and the A was also on the inside row that we played earlier, which was a pull when we did it there. Yeah, and then finally on the next button along, even there we're almost at the end now, if we pull that one, that's going to give us a B, and again we've played a B on the inside one previously when I think we pushed it, so it was there, and wow, you see, so we had the D and the E were both on both rows in the same direction, and then the F sharp, the G, the A and the B are on both rows, but they switch directions, so if they're pushing on the inside they're pulling on the outside, and vice versa. So hopefully you followed that. It's covered a lot of notes very quickly, but they're notes you should know, and it's just a different place you can play them. So nothing different, it's just where you choose to do it. However, we've got 2 more to go, so let's go on to that one. So we're almost there. We've almost got another complete octave, a higher octave version of D major. We've got 2 more notes to get, so where do they come in? Let's do the lower octave one just as a revision again. So start there, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. Those are the ones we've already covered in the top one. Then finally there's a pulled C sharp, if you remember, and then finishing it off with a pushed D. And that was where we started from the upper octave, so there we go, that's F sharp, G, A, pull B, and we then get another pull again like we had in the lower one, and that one is a C sharp again, and that's on this button here, which is right next to where the B is. So you've got, That should be familiar from elsewhere when you get those two together. So that's your C sharp, and then the very final D is, well, this is an odd one. The very final D is not on this button, it's actually on this button. It kind of works if you follow the logic of where they go, but what it actually means is that to make the next higher note from here, you're actually going back this way down the keyboard to find it, which seems very odd. Counterintuitive, I think would be the word. And that's it. That's your complete D scale. So that's covered almost all of the buttons from about here right up to the end. We've just got a couple more. So let's do those two in the last section here. Okay, so how do we finish off and last couple of buttons on this outer row and get that one all finished off? What's over there? What could they be? So we've just finished up and we've just been distracted by a big gust of wind from outside. You didn't need to know that, did you? Anyway, let's get on with it. We finished that last D scale right up the end here, playing on the push note on there. So what other notes do we have available? So that's a D. Do we have an E, which we'd expect to be pulled because all our other E's have been pulled, and there's only one possibility of a spare button that we haven't used yet on the pull, and that's this very end one. So let's try that one. Jackpot, that's an E. So and you've got a weird gap between the D there and then the E, which is 2 buttons along. So after that, what do we get? What's in next in? E, F sharp. Do we have another F sharp? Even higher. Well, F sharps on this row have so far all been push notes, so we'd expect the next F sharp to also be a push note. So, and F sharps tend to follow on the next button along to where the D note is. So we know we've got a D note pushing on that button there. So is that an F sharp? Yep, I think it is. So we've got D, E, F sharp. And then finally, what's the push note for this end one? Well, if we follow the pattern again, like we have done down the bottom, we had D, F sharp, A, D. So if we start from the top here, we had a D there, and that's an F sharp. So is that an A? It is. We've got an A note there. So that's covered all of the notes that are at this end. Chances are you won't ever use these very much. At least you won't probably find any tunes that in the folk repertoire that tell you need to use these. However, once you get more advanced and confident, you might find you start to use them to, if you want to play a tune in a higher octave, then you might start using those, or you might use them for chords and just filling in extra notes just to make a bigger sound. So they are useful, even if you're playing tunes that don't even ask for them. You can go up there and use them, and with an instrument like this with a lower reading, they become much more pleasant to listen to as well. So I think that's the end of this video. We've covered most of the D row now. We've only got a couple of buttons on the end that we haven't done on that row, but we've only done most of this. We haven't done these last bits, so that's what we'll do next. We'll finish off the G row. See you then. Hope you enjoyed it.